This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
On the move in the Middle East. Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. President Trump continues his trek through the Arab world, pushing commerce over chaos in a region racked by war.
The whole world is watching the Middle East, and many are watching with envy. You have something very special going on. Incredible opportunities are within reach for this region.
While attending a summit of Arab states in Riyadh this morning, Mr. Trump announced he wants to make a peace deal with Iran.
But for that to happen, it must stop sponsoring terror, halt its bloody proxy wars, and permanently and verifiably cease its pursuit of nuclear weapons. They cannot have a nuclear weapon.
The commander-in-chief also announcing he's lifting sanctions against war-torn Syria. He met today with the new interim president of Syria. It was the first face-to-face encounter between both nations' heads of state in 25 years. Former U.S. Ambassador David Shapiro.
Sanctions relief for Syria is a gamble, but it's the right to gamble. The collapse of the Assad regime has really given Syrians, for the first time in many, many years, an opportunity to build a better future.
President Trump is in Qatar right now, the second leg of his three-nation, four-day Mideast excursion. The government of Qatar, by the way, has bankrolled the terror group Hamas to the tune of almost $2 billion. In Gaza today, Israeli Defense Forces launched missiles at a Hamas-run hospital. That happened in Khan Yunis. Nearly 50 were killed in the military operation. Eugene Kontorovich with the Heritage Foundation says hospitals serve a strategic purpose for Hamas.
Hospitals that aren't just run by Hamas. They are, in fact, used by Hamas as bases. They're an integral part of Hamas's military operations.
Israel says it was targeting a Hamas command and control center that was operating beneath that hospital in Gaza today. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will be serving as the point man for peace talks tomorrow between Russia and Ukraine. That get-together is happening in Istanbul, Turkey. Foreign affairs expert Eli Kohanim on the prospects that Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky will be there to meet face to face.
No administration has put in more time and effort in trying to resolve all these wars and conflicts that the president has inherited from the Biden administration. But very, very difficult, it seems, to get these presidents to sit face to face, which is what the ask is right now.
The direct talks between Russia and Ukraine are the first since the early stages of the war. An explosive new book makes startling claims about former President Biden and his mental acuity while he occupied the Oval Office. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez.
This book had been highly anticipated here in Washington, and the authors note they spoke to about 200 sources, and many of them did not think Biden could ably serve a second term. The former president's team is now pushing back hard against allegations he put his pride above his country.
The book is called Original Sin. It is co-authored by CNN's Jake Tapper. It describes how Biden's inner circle dealt with his cognitive decline during the 2024 presidential campaign. That book hits store shelves next week. After 35 years behind bars, Eric and Lyle Menendez have a new shot at freedom. The celebrity killer's aunt telling NBC News,
they're coming home. They're not going to die in prison. We know that. And so that's huge.
A judge in Los Angeles has resentenced the Menendez brothers with the possibility of parole. The district attorney, however, does not agree with that decision.
These are two individuals who brutally shotgunned their parents. By the way, not just their father, but their mother as well, and then lied about it for 30 years, have engaged in a cover-up for 30 years, and have never completely accepted responsibility for all their actions.
The brothers brutally murdered their parents in Beverly Hills back in 1989. 9. They claim it was self-defense after years of abuse by their father. Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred has brought back to good graces 2 banned players. CBS's Jim Axelrod says they're now eligible for the Hall of Fame.
Pete Rose got in death what he wanted, but never got the last 35 years of his life. A possible pathway to baseball's Hall of Fame. Rose, baseball's all-time hit leader.
Getting thrown out of baseball.
And shoeless Joe Jackson.
Was like having part of me amputated.
And who died in 1951, portrayed here by actor Ray Liotta in Field of Dreams, were both banned from baseball for their involvement in gambling scandals.
Commissioner Manfred says both Rose and Jackson are being reinstated because their deaths removes them from the banned list. Now both are eligible for the Hall of Fame posthumously. They can't get in, however, until 2028 at the earliest. It's only May. We're already talking extreme heat in the Deep South, and that heat won't quit anytime soon.
It doesn't end at the end of the week. It doesn't end this weekend. It doesn't even end at the beginning of next week. We have this pattern locked in, and it is just going to sizzle for the next week at the very least, with record temperatures every single day in Texas.
Meteorologist David Parkinson says highs today in Dallas will soar past 100 degrees.
We're talking about breaking daytime records by 6 or 7 degrees, which rarely happens in a place like Dallas. Your old record is in the mid-90s, and you're actually looking at, on Wednesday, at hitting 102. So that's the kind of heat that we're talking about.
Meantime, heat advisories are expected to be issued soon in Alaska for the first time in that state's history. The National Weather Service will begin issuing heat advisories next month. Alaska's climate is heating up at nearly double the rate of the rest of the country. Still to come on the Noon Report for a Wednesday. 3 years since the Tops shooting, the best burger in New York, and how Planned Parenthood is spending your tax dollars.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams, tracking some showers in parts of the area. I'll have forecast details in 10 minutes.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much. Let's check the stories that are making news where you live next. Today marks 3 years since the Tops Supermarket massacre in Buffalo. Longtime resident and community activist Dr. Eva Doyle tells News Talk 930.
What I see that I think is a positive thing is that people are coming together, unifying, to trying to do as much as they can to improve and empower our community.
Doyle is attending a prayer vigil today at the Meriwether Library in Buffalo in honor of the shooting victims.
We have 8 pastors of leading churches who will be giving prayers remembering the victims of the Tops massacre.
The man responsible for that massacre, Peyton Gendron, is serving a life sentence. He could get the death penalty. A $15 million memorial honoring the 10 people killed in that racially motivated shooting. That memorial is going to be built near the scene of the crime on Jefferson Avenue in Buffalo. Groundbreaking will happen sometime in 2026. A bill that would have legalized recreational marijuana is dead in the Pennsylvania Senate. Not going anywhere, says State Senator Dan Laughlin. He says selling marijuana through state-run stores would unfairly shut out the private sector and small businesses.
The state acting as a buyer will limit consumer choice and drive consumers out of state to neighboring legal markets like Maryland, New Jersey, New York, and Ohio.
Laughlin says he supports legalization, but says the state store model is not the way to go. Others argue the commercialization of marijuana will lead to more problems than it will solve. The investigation continues into the cause of that deadly home explosion in Hamburg, New York, 2 nights ago. A 78-year-old man in critical condition. His 78-year-old wife was killed in the blast.
You hear the call come out as a house explosion and you think that's horrible. Not until you arrive on scene and see the magnitude of what took place voice could you possibly grasp the scene here?
That's Erie County Emergency Services Manager Sean Crotty. More than 200 responders from 20 different agencies worked to put out the flames following the blast, which was felt for miles around. Penn State officials are airing their displeasure after a published report disclosed what satellite campuses may be closing. We get more from Family Life's Brian Query.
The report, published by the Philadelphia Inquirer, said 7 Commonwealth campuses are most likely to be closing. The university has reportedly narrowed down the list of campuses it may shutter to Du Bois, Fayette, Mont Alto, New Kensington, Shenango, Wilkes-Barre, and York. In response, Penn State issued a statement saying it is, quote, regrettable that our communities who may be impacted by campus closures are hearing information before a final decision. That final decision would come in the form of a public vote from the university's Board of Trustees, which will meet virtually on Thursday to discuss the closures. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Thank you, Brian. Planned Parenthood in Pennsylvania is using money meant for COVID relief on other things. The abortion provider got more than $500,000 in pandemic assistance to operate LGBTQ youth programs in Bucks County outside Philadelphia. According to the Pennsylvania Family Institute, that money was spent on drag shows and queer proms that targeted elementary-aged kids. Bucks County also spent more than $13,000 in opioid settlement funds to bus students to a transgender-themed event, which was also sponsored by Planned Parenthood. Nurses at Rochester General Hospital in Western New York are sounding the alarm about staffing levels. They're too low, and that impacts patient care, says this nurse.
When we are understaffed, your loved one that is getting their open heart surgery in their most critical time is not being able to be cared for adequately.
The Rochester Union of Nurses and Allied Professionals staged a protest outside Rochester General Hospital yesterday, raising awareness about the staffing crisis. Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman's popularity is sinking among Democratic voters in his own backyard. Internal polling shows the Democratic lawmaker is underwater in his hometown of Pittsburgh. Fetterman was mayor of Braddock, which is just outside the Steel City. His favorability rating is just 46% there. By way of comparison, Governor Josh Shapiro has an 82% favorability rating in the burg. A recent New York Magazine article raised serious concerns about Fetterman's mental and physical health. Inflation refund checks are included in the recently passed New York State budget. Those checks will range from $150 to $400 per household, and they'll be mailed out sometime in the fall. Governor Hochul says the checks are to offset the high cost of living in the Empire State.
I see what families are going through right now. I just want to use everything I can at my disposal and my power to be able to acknowledge it, but also do something about it.
Critics argue instead of issuing refund checks, the state should lower the tax rate. New York leads the nation in out-migration, and a big reason for that is the crushing tax burden in the Empire State. Burger lovers, take note, your next must-try meal may be in the city of Corning, New York. That's because the Butcher's Son, located on Market Street in Corning, has just won the Best New York Burger competition, thanks in part to its bold, flavor-packed Ghost Burger. The burger battle is sponsored every year by the New York Beef Council. The Ghost Burger at the Butcher's Son is made with 2 grass-fed beef patties, candied jalapenos, jalapeno pickles, provolone cheese, and a generous slathering of barbecue sauce. I know where I'm going for lunch. All right, let's switch gears, talk sports. It's the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, the Indiana Pacers are back in the Eastern Conference Finals after eliminating the Cleveland Cavaliers 114-105. Tyrese Halliburton scored 31 points, leading the Pacers. Indiana now awaits the Knicks-Celtics winner, and it's looking more and more like it will be the New Yorkers. They are up 3-1 entering tonight's contest. In the West, the Thunder held serve on their home court in Game 5, 112-105. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander poured in 31 points as Oklahoma City came from behind in the fourth quarter, outscoring Denver 34-19. Nikola Jokic had a huge night for the Nuggets. He had 44 points and he grabbed 15 rebounds, but it wasn't enough. It's the Thunder who are up 3-2. On to baseball. The Mets and Yankees both had 2-1 games, but one New York team won and the other one lost. The Mets beat the Pirates on a bases-loaded walk, and the Yankees fell to the Mariners on J.P. Crawford's RBI single in the bottom of the 11th inning. Phillies-Cardinals game was rained out, as were the Twins and Orioles. Other teams picking up wins on the diamond: the Tigers, Rays, Astros, Braves, Cubs, Giants, Padres, Guardians, Rangers, White Sox, and Athletics. To hockey, and what a time to record your first playoff career hat trick. Michael Granlund scored all 3 of Dallas's goals, and they beat Winnipeg, the top-seeded Jets, 3-1 to take a 3-1 lead in the series. That is a look at sports.
All right, Randy, thank you. And still to come on the Noon Report for a Wednesday, Trump stumps in the Arab states, Texas-sized heat, and too many squirrels in Santa Monica.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. In the Darwinian story, humans evolved by winning the survival of the fittest contest between lower life forms. If that story's true, then why do we find accounts of forgiveness so compelling? During the COVID pandemic, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya signed a declaration with other public health scientists raising concerns about the physical and mental health impacts of COVID lockdowns. Francis Collins was the director of the National Institutes of Health at the time. In a since-leaked email, he called Bhattacharya a fringe epidemiologist who needed a quick and devastating published takedown of his declaration. And that's exactly what happened. A whole coalition of the powerful worked to discredit Dr. Bhattacharya. His criticisms of Dr. Fauci's proclamations about natural immunity, mask efficacy, school closures, and contact tracing were all called ludicrous and dangerous. In addition to all the public humiliation, Bhattacharya received death threats. Now, 5 years later, Dr. Bhattacharya has not only been proven right about the devastating consequences of COVID lockdowns, he was just appointed the new director of the NIH. However, when he was asked about the public criticisms by Collins and Fauci and others, rather than take a moment to gloat and condemn those who attempted to ruin his career, he did one of the most radical things he could do. He offered forgiveness. In a recent interview with Barry Weiss, Bhattacharya said this of Francis Collins, quote, "I've been praying for him ever since I found out that he'd written that email. I told him that I'd been praying for him, and I still will pray for him. I think that reconciliation is really possible. Even if people disagree with each other fundamentally, even hate each other, and I never hated him and never will," end quote. In Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis described forgiveness as the most unpopular of the Christian virtues. Everyone says forgiveness is a lovely idea, he wrote, until they have something to forgive. And forgiveness clearly is one of the most countercultural things anyone can do in this cultural moment. Now, forgiveness may be incomprehensible to many, but it is absolutely real. And that's because forgiveness has been established in the fabric of reality by the creator of reality. Over 2,000 years ago, the creator took on flesh, lived as a sinless man, and was then punished unfairly on the cross after being beaten, whipped, abandoned, and publicly humiliated. Not only did Jesus pay for the sins of the world in this way, but as he did so, he prayed, "Father, forgive them." When people in this particularly vengeful cultural moment see true forgiveness, they will inevitably wonder why. Christians should always be ready to give an answer for this hope that we have. Because God forgave. Because God first loved us. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
All right, John, thank you very much. Let's take it outside next. The always reliable Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life weather forecast. The call for today through the afternoon, variably cloudy, few scattered showers, a rumble of thunder, high temperatures mid-60s to the mid-70s. Tonight, mainly cloudy, chance of a shower, a little patchy fog late, low temps 50s and low 60s. Tomorrow, Friday, variably cloudy. It'll be relatively warm and humid. A few scattered showers, a couple thunderstorms around with high temperatures in the 70s to near 80.
Thank you very much, Kevin. This is the Noon Report on Family Life. Glad you're with us today. I'm your host, Bob Price, and there's a lot to get to. Wednesday, the 14th of May, President Trump is on the move in the Middle East, in the Arab state of Qatar today, a day after announcing he's lifting sanctions against war-torn Syria.
The president is giving the new government of Syria a chance to recreate itself. Syria, as we know, had become a terror proxy of Iran and as well of Russia.
Mideast scholar Eli Kohano.
And so by President Trump giving them this opportunity to reshape their future, he's allowing them to leave the Iranian sphere and hopefully go into the sphere of the moderate Sunni Arab states like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Mr. Trump also announcing today he's interested in pursuing a peace deal with Iran, but only if Iran abandons its nuclear ambitions and stops funding terrorist activity throughout the Middle East. Iran is the world's largest supporter of terrorism. On Capitol Hill, House Republicans trying to get the president's budget priorities past the finish line. Doug Luzader at Fox News has the very latest on the wheelin' and dealin'.
They have been burning the midnight oil here on Capitol Hill as a number of House committees try to move ahead with what the president calls his big, beautiful bill.
We make no apologies for prioritizing Americans in need over illegal immigrants and those who are capable but choose not to work.
The package includes extending tax cuts from Trump's first term, increasing the child tax credit. Democrats accuse Republicans of cutting Medicaid, which has dramatically expanded in recent years.
It's Ebenezer Scrooge Day at the Capitol today, taking health care from the poor to fund tax cuts for the rich.
Republicans are hoping to wrap this all up in the House before Memorial Day. That is going to be a heavy lift.
That is Doug Luzader on Capitol Hill today. Hundreds had to be evacuated after widespread flooding led to dangerous conditions in western Maryland and southern Pennsylvania. Yesterday, 150 students and 50 adults were rescued by boat from an elementary school after flood waters breached the school building. The water is very high in that part of the Mid-Atlantic. The heat is on in Texas today. Daytime highs expected to exceed 100 degrees in cities like Dallas. Reporter Ryan Chandler.
You know, Texas is used to triple digits. We call that summertime, but this is historically early.
Parts of Texas will be among the hottest places on planet Earth today. The searing heat will last into next week in the Lone Star State. A judge in Los Angeles has resentenced the Menendez brothers. Both Lyle and Eric, that means the celebrity killers, could get a chance at freedom soon. They brutally murdered their parents in Beverly Hills back in 1989. The Menendez brothers claim it was self-defense after enduring years of abuse by their father. The LA DA does not agree with the judge's ruling, but California Governor Gavin Newsom could order the release of the Menendez brothers as soon as today. The 37th annual National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial was held last night on the National Mall in Washington, D.C.
This year, the names of 345 fallen heroes will be etched into the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. They join more than 24,000 officers who have made the same ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty.
House Speaker Mike Johnson officiated over the ceremony, and he said to the families of the fallen,
"No amount of words or wreaths can heal the hole in each family member's heart. But I do hope that these families find some comfort in knowing that millions of Americans grieve with them. We certainly do."
The vigil was part of National Police Week. The Trump White House cutting another $450 million from Harvard University. Earlier, more than $2 billion was axed. The Trump administration says Harvard's become a breeding ground for virtue signaling and discrimination. Pete Rose and shoeless Joe Jackson reinstated yesterday by Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred. They'd been banned because of gambling scandals. That move makes them both eligible eligible for induction into the Hall of Fame. Comes 8 months after Rose's death. USA Today baseball writer Bob Nightingale says the path to the Hall, though, for both of them may still be difficult.
Everybody in baseball knows you cannot gamble on baseball. He did. I know he's dead. So is Joe Jackson, dead against his team and through games.
In all, 17 former players and executives had their status changed by the Manfred ruling. Under current rules, the earliest that Rose or Jackson could get into the Hall of Fame would be 2028. You're listening to The Noon Report on Family Life.
Do you wonder if the church has lost its way? Well, we'll be talking about that today on Family Life's Inside Out, where we look at how God transforms his people from the inside out. I'm Martha Manikas Foster, and my guest today is theologian, pastor, musician, and author Glenn Packiam. His new book is titled, What's a Christian Anyway? Finding Our Way in an Age of Confusion and Corruption. So Glenn, I think we're all familiar with pastoral scandals, some people, including our friends, throwing off their faith, others unapologetically marrying faith with a political movement. What do you consider the chief cultural challenges to Christianity?
Well, I think that these challenges, we could picture it as two crosswinds in a blizzard. And the one crosswind is that crosswind of corruption. It is the scandals that we see, the failures of leaders and of pastors, but it's also the result of the church allowing itself to be co-opted by political agendas, social movements, and that sort of thing. And then the other crosswind is the crosswind of confusion. We're living in a moment where there are so many voices vying for our attention, and people will listen to someone and they'll say, oh, I heard this so-and-so said this online. You go, well, who said that? Have they studied the Bible? Have they, gone to school? They go, no, but they have 1 million followers. And so popularity has replaced credibility, and that's contributed to this crosswind of confusion. And so when I think of this, I think of, there's an image from the old prairie days, of the farm days, where they put a rope up between the house and the barn whenever a blizzard was coming in. And they did that because the farmers knew that even this familiar distance from the house to the barn, that they've walked 1,000 times, in a blizzard, it can get so disorienting that you could be stuck out there in the cold unless you had a rope to lead you home. The storms are going to come. We're going to be caught in these crosswinds of confusion and corruption. The question is, do we have a rope that will help us find our way home? And I believe that the early Christians, they were no stranger to times like these. They put up a rope for us, and that's this confession of faith we're going to talk about today.
Why don't you tell us why you believe the ancient Nicene Creed can help us?
In the 300s, as Christianity was growing and spreading in different regions of the world, many Christian communities were remaining faithful to Jesus, faithful to the apostles' teaching. They understood which documents belonged and should be treated as scripture. But there were also other teachers and preachers who were gaining popularity but lacking that connection to the faith of the first followers of Jesus. And so there was a council that was convened in a city called Nicaea in the year 325, and it was fairly straightforward in saying, okay, these are the books that belong in the New Testament. And then along with that, this is the confession of faith. Sometimes Christians call it the canon and the creed. The canon refers to the books that belong to the Bible. And the creed, they go together. They came from the same gathering, the same council, because the Bible is the Word of God. But this confession of faith is like bumper lanes for our Bible reading. They're designed so that we can't read the Bible and come up with funny conclusions that contradict the nature of who God is, or how creation or salvation or the hope of restoration, how all of those things work. And so in the Creed, these phrases are actually lifted from the letters in the New Testament.
So Glenn, if we are concerned about the direction the church has taken, how might we take our first steps toward finding our way in an age of confusion and corruption?
The goal for these early Christians, when they gave us this creed, and the creed functions like a rope that helps us find our way home in the midst of a storm, in the midst of a blizzard of confusion and corruption, their hope was not just that we would treat these like a statement of faith, but rather an act of surrender. Faith is not just a mental agreement to a statement. Faith is a pledge of fidelity. And so I think part of the pathway to regaining credibility, and I'm playing here with the words creed and credibility.
Yes, I see it.
Is to believe our creed and then to live like these words are true. And that's only possible by the grace of God. That's only possible by the power of the Holy Spirit.
So how about if you speak to those people who the creed was not part of their tradition? What would you say to someone who's really not familiar and is somewhat suspicious of the creed?
Well, I understand that. I've been around non-denominational churches all of my adult life. And I also want to say that my number one goal is not that you'd come to love the creed. Mm-hmm. My number one goal is that you'd come to love God the Father, mm-hmm. the Son, and the Holy Spirit. That's the goal behind this. And the reason I chose it is because it's the fullest confession of the core of Christian faith that is held by every Protestant mm-hmm. denomination, the Catholic Church, and then the Orthodox streams as well. And so it's kind of what C.S. Lewis would have called mere Christianity. Mm-hmm. There's a kind of unifying effect of the creed, but then there's a purifying effect of the creed. It can help us identify where we've added things or given things more weight than we should have given them. And that's the importance of having something like this.
You've been listening to Pastor Glenn Packiam on this week's edition of Inside Out. You can subscribe, listen to, and share this feature, as well as all our original podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or FamilyLife.org.
A very good afternoon to all. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. We're kind of in a status quo weather pattern now. Low pressure aimlessly adrift in the Ohio Valley will keep us in a fairly moist airflow into the start of the weekend. Showers and a few thunderstorms will result, but pointing out, as I've done recently, there's going to be frequent rain-free periods as well. Just be a rather unsettled and uncertain regime over the next several days. The call for today through the afternoon, variably cloudy. Few scattered showers, a rumble of thunder, high temperatures mid-60s to the mid-70s. Tonight, mainly cloudy, chance of a shower, a little patchy fog late, low temps 50s and low 60s. Tomorrow, Friday, variably cloudy. It'll be relatively warm and humid. A few scattered showers, a couple thunderstorms around with high temperatures in the 70s to near 80.
Thank you, Kevin. Finally, today, rodents are overrunning a public park in Santa Monica, California. The squirrel population there has exploded in recent years. Public officials in the popular Oceanside community are now telling residents do not feed the squirrels because that only exacerbates the problem. These Santa Monicans, that's what you call them, say they're fed up with the furry animals.
I went to school in New York City, and those squirrels would look up at you and kind of have an attitude like, what are you looking at, buddy? And I've noticed now that these squirrels have become kind of desensitized to all the people. I mean, I almost trip over them when I jog because they don't get out of your way.
I was just sitting in the park, and the squirrels came up to me, and one actually crawled on my leg and was like, give me the nuts you're eating. I wasn't really worried that it was going to bite me because they are just so docile now. I mean, it's crazy. People come and they play with them, they feed them all the time now, and I'm just like, guys, please stop feeding the squirrels.
Yeah, stop feeding the squirrels. The overabundance of squirrels started during COVID, and it's just gotten worse since then. There are literally hundreds of them squirreling around Palisades Park in Santa Monica, California. And that's our world, the world we live in. Wednesday, the 14th of May. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.